Years ago, I came across a recipe for a chilled cucumber and buttermilk soup, and that's what I'm going to be working on today. Now, I've actually tried making the soup before, following several different recipes in the past, and I've always found that it's a bit lacking. It's a bit flat. When I think of a chilled cucumber and buttermilk soup, what I imagine is something that's going to be rich and tangy from the buttermilk, but also light and refreshing. Something that's going to be elegant and have these vegetal and herbal notes, but ideally something that's not going to be one note from the cucumber, but actually have more complexity to it. I wanted to have some notes of acidity to add brightness to the soup, but also to have umami that gives the soup depth and body and makes it something that's really satisfying and feels like you're having a very rich all-around experience. So I've done my research, and the recipes for a chilled buttermilk and cucumber soup really run the gamut from simple to complex. A lot of the recipes are just as simple as having cucumber and buttermilk and lemon and a couple of other ingredients tossed into a blender, blend it together, and you're done. On the other side of the spectrum, there's recipes that have jalapeno and mustard, and I can't say that I'm super convinced on that idea. I'm willing to have my mind changed, but I'm not going to try that today. What I did find, however, were some recipes that have celery and anchovies in them. And I find that to be really intriguing because that adds a lot of complexity, especially the celery notes within the soup. So I'm going to be working along those lines today. So I have a mental checklist of the ingredients that I'm going to be using in the soup today, and I'm going to be heading over to the store. Now, in Vienna, shopping is a little bit hit or miss. You're not always guaranteed to find the ingredients that you're looking for at just one store. So we'll see what happens, and we'll see what's actually available. So not terribly surprising, but I didn't actually find everything I needed from one store, so I'm heading to another store around the corner to get anchovies and celery. Okay, so I found everything I need now, so I'm headed home to get started on the soup. So I'm back in my kitchen. I have my ingredients set up behind me, as well as the equipment that I need, and a piece of paper and a pen for taking notes as I go. And I have a general sense of how I'm going to be making the soup. I know that the soup is going to be uncooked, and that the celery and cucumber have a lot of water in them, which will be released when I blend them. I've set a bowl up on a kitchen scale so I can easily keep track of the amounts of each thing I'm adding. My hope is that the celery is going to add a savory flavor to the soup that you wouldn't get from just the cucumber. I'm going to trim off the leaves and blend just the stalks. Now, the key to making this soup today is going to be balance. The celery, the cucumber, the lemon, the dill, everything else that we're bringing in, they're delicate flavors, and we really want to keep them in balance so that you don't have one thing overpowering the other. The shallot will add a layer of allium flavors, really solidifying the savoriness of the soup. We just want to be careful it doesn't get too oniony and throw off our balance. Now, if you're making a chilled soup, you want to make sure that it has these two things. It needs to have fat and it needs to have acid. I'm planning to use lemon as one of our sources of acidity, but I'm going to hold off adding it until I've tasted the soup with both the buttermilk and the yogurt. I'm working with a relatively small bullet-style blender that has a max capacity of 800 milliliters, so I have to blend in batches. Since everything will all be mixed together by the end, I'm not really paying attention to how much of each thing I blend at a time, just that there's enough liquid in the blender to help everything puree smoothly. The buttermilk and yogurt are fulfilling two roles in the soup. They're going to give us both acid and fat. Instead of a sharp, assertive sourness like lemon, The buttermilk and yogurt will give us more of a fermented tang. Once the majority of the ingredients are in, we can see how much of the lemon is needed to boost the tanginess of the yogurt and buttermilk and bring those flavors into balance. Now, fat is a better vehicle for flavor than water is, which is one reason that when you have a chilled soup, you need to have some element of fat in it. I'm planning for the fat in the soup to come from 3 sources: buttermilk and Greek yogurt, and later on, possibly some olive oil. Altogether, it should give the soup a lot of body, making it feel rich and elegant while still being light and refreshing. One of the keys to making the soup an elegant experience is getting the mouthfeel right. I want it to be completely smooth, which means I'm going to be straining the puree. This is definitely the most tedious part of making a soup like this. Basically, I want to push out all of the liquid from this mixture, leaving only the solids behind. To do that, I'm just dumping all of the puree into a fine mesh strainer over a bowl and then using a scraping spatula to push on the solids and squeeze the liquid out. Make sure that you don't use too flexible of a spatula when you do this, because you really want to be able to put some force behind it to make it go faster. Now, one of the keys to making a chilled vegetable soup is time. You need to give your soup time to let those flavors meld together. You also need to make sure that you season it right before serving it. So while it's chilling, all of those flavors will be melding together, but the cold is also going to decrease your ability to taste the salt. So we will taste it and season it before it's chilled, but you want to make sure that you do it again after. If you don't season it after chilling it, then you might actually find that while it tasted great when you first made it, it actually tastes kind of flat now that it's cold. At this stage, it's definitely got a pronounced tang, but you can still taste both the celery and the cucumber coming through, which is good. I can also taste the allium flavors of the shallots, which I like, but I don't want the shallot flavor to be overpowering. Adding in the lemon and some more salt should help tone that down. It still needs some more acid, which will come from the lemon this time, as well as some anchovies for some depth. I will add in the olive oil after all, which should give it some nuttiness, and I think the dill will actually make a huge impact, adding in a lot of perfume and complexity. The olive oil actually added way more than I expected. The nuttiness of it really helps to cut through the tanginess of the buttermilk. And the dill did just what I hoped and added a lot of freshness and complexity. I'm glad I went with just a half tablespoon of lemon instead of a whole. The acidity is perfect for me. Finally, one last blend. I hate wasting food, so I'm going to add some more of the soup back into the blender with the remaining solids and see if we can get anything more out of it. So now that the soup has had some time to chill, I'm going to taste it and see if we need to season it anymore. Wow. I have to say, really honestly, I'm very happy with how the soup came out. I don't think it actually needs any more salt at the moment, although maybe before serving, which would be a few hours from now, I'll see again and see if it needs more salt. I really like that there's a lot of richness in the soup. You can almost see like this foaminess that's come to the top. And the soup is light and thin, but it's also creamy. And the flavor just immediately floods through your mouth and then hits right at the back of your tongue. You can taste all of these different levels of complexity. However, you're not actually tasting the lemon, just like you're not actually tasting the olive oil or even the anchovy that's in it. It ends up being really balanced, but really complex, and that's exactly what I was looking for. So I'm really happy with how this one turned out. So for rating this recipe, here's what I would think. As for how easy it is to find the ingredients, I would give that a 5 out of 5. Buttermilk, cucumber, celery, all of that stuff, you can easily pick it up at a grocery store. Not only are they easy to find, none of these ingredients are very expensive. It's not a very difficult recipe, especially if you have a full-size blender unlike me. However, you do need to take the time to strain everything through a sieve if you want it to have a smooth texture and consistency, and that is just time consuming. This recipe is great for a dinner party because you can make it ahead of time, and of course you serve it chilled. However, I probably wouldn't do more than double the batch simply because I don't have the space or a big enough blender to do it. So I wouldn't actually rate this recipe very highly as far as using it to serve a party. Hit like and subscribe for more recipes and videos, and I'll see you next time.